welcome. So November the 9th, 2022, AEW Dynamite. Let us discuss what's the news and notes first. So Jericho and Matt Hardy both weigh in on what's been going on backstage, and the Matt Hardy joint is absolutely funny, and the Chris Jericho one is illuminating. Let's get into Matt Hardy first, because this was the older of the two. Matt Hardy on his podcast, this is a transcript, said this: "It's going to be very interesting to see the Elite back, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega. I'm very happy they are back. I will say this right here and right now. Those guys didn't do anything wrong in this situation. If anything, they were the victims. I'm telling you that from a first-person perspective. I was there. I witnessed it all. I love all three of those guys. I've known Matt and Nick forever. I've just gotten to know Kenny while working in AEW. I'm very happy. They are returning to TV, and they are back in the mix. They deserve to be in the mix." This is what Matt Hardy said. They're the victims in this situation. You know, the guys who went to the locker room when they shouldn't have and started an altercation that probably they could have ignored and let it die down. They were the victims. Yes, one of them got punched in the face. The other one got bit. Who knows what happened to the third one? We have no idea, but we know for sure, at least it's been confirmed, that somebody got punched in the face and somebody got bit. So I'm guessing they were the victims insofar that they were victimized. But they wouldn't have gotten bit and wouldn't have gotten punched if they hadn't been in the general vicinity of a guy who they pissed off for several weeks before he went out there chewing muffins, smacking his lips, and going crazy in the scrum. They were the victims, said Matt Hardy. So a lot of the CM Punk fans started giving Matt Hardy some grief, and he immediately started to back off of this. I think it was the very next day, actually. He tweeted out, "My comments from this week's Matt Hardy pod have been misconstrued. I was not at All Out 22. I did not say I witnessed the events at All Out. I witnessed the entire process in real time over the months and stand by my comment that the Elite were not in the wrong." Now, wait a minute. Let's back up to what he said. He says, quote, "I'm telling you that from a first-person perspective. I was there. I witnessed it all." Wait a minute. So what? A first-person perspective, I witnessed it all. That is not saying that people are misconstruing your statement. You could say you misspoke and say, well, I technically didn't see that situation, but I saw other situations in which, you know, the other guy in question was antagonizing them, or situations in which they were having to respond to situations created by the other guy. That would have been a better way of putting it. And I get how, you know, when you speaking off the cuff, which I know he is on his podcast, you say things you don't entirely mean. You are in some ways not, you imprecise, because I do it. You know, I'm imprecise with my language sometimes. I can understand that. So I'm not going to say Matt Hardy was, you know, he buckled under the pressure. I'm going to say he used the words, he used the wrong words. He was aware and is aware of the situation backstage in AEW, and he is on the Elite side. But the way he made it sound like he was standing there watching them fight. You know, like he made it sound like he was there, you know, sitting against the wall, like, wow, look at this shit. You know, but it's kind of crazy that he was the first person to put his own name and face on this situation, because everybody else is under a gag order, apparently. Nobody else can talk about what happened. But Matt Hardy is the first one to really come out and say, I stand with the Young Bucks. And considering the Young Bucks are the ones who are coming back, I'm not surprised at all he's willing to stand with the Young Bucks. Considering he was there before CM Punk was there, he probably knows what the company was like when Cody was there and when the Elite had authority, and the fans actually seem to be happier with the product. And that's just generally my sense, is people were happier with AEW before Punk got there. And then they were happiest when Punk came in, and then that happiness kind of went down over time. But that's just kind of how it is, though. Like, sometimes you get people to the climax. It's sex. You go as high as you could possibly go, and then it's nothing but downhill from there. And CM Punk, once, like, his debut was the climax. It was as high as they were ever going to go. There was nowhere for them to go after you get Punk and Danielson and those guys in the company at the same time. You can't sustain that. It's not going to get higher than that. So it started to dwindle a little bit. People started to not be very excited about CM Punk's angles, weren't very excited about his matches, the choice of opponents, his feuds, or lack thereof, especially at the beginning. People did like some of the stuff that he started doing a little bit later, but he started to shed viewers. Some people just started kind of like, here and there, they pop in, pop out. The happiness level wasn't there. So I can see how Matt Hardy might have knowledge of the inner workings of AEW and say that the Elite are not the bad guys that maybe other people think they are. I get how he might feel that way. I get how he might say that. So I don't necessarily see it as being a kiss ass thing as much as, and there's going to be some element of kiss ass to it. I mean, it just is what it is. But it is interesting that when we look at, AEW before Punk got there and how it seemed like one big family, it was literally all friends wrestling. And then CM Punk came in and it became more about more business. We're going to bring in big name talent who was in WWE, who was in NXT and stuff like that. It kind of shifted the roster up a little bit. You started seeing more bigger name guys who had WWE exposure. It started coming across a lot like TNA and WCW, where those guys were getting the top spots, and people who had been there for a while, like Darby, were getting pushed back. Jungle Boy diminished in interest when those guys started to come in. And the only guy who managed to stay afloat was MJF. Of the original group, even Sammy Guevara fell off a cliff when a lot of those guys came in. Cody even left the company completely. So, it became like TNA, like WCW, where there was an influx of guys from the WWF who had their run already, who was coming in for a ton of money, and they were going to get big spots because they were coming in for a ton of money. And that disrupted what the friend group that they had, because now there's guys coming in, they're making a lot more money than the other guys who are already working there, and they're taking spots. And now things ain't as hunky-dory as it was. Politics starts to kick up. So, and now, I guess if CM Punk was working in the office too, that makes sense too, why things would shift a little bit too. So I get it. I get why he's saying what he said. So Matt Hardy continues. When I saw them yesterday, it's so good to see you guys. You guys are the heart and soul of AEW. The Elite, in many ways, are the identity of AEW. Without those guys, you don't have AEW as it is right now. Things are very different. Tony Khan may have started wrestling in some capacity, but all Elite wrestling, those guys are the identity of AEW. It's very important to have them back. Now, this is a statement that I have made before, that literally they are the identity of AEW. If given the choice, you kind of have to keep them, because this is the core fan base. The core fan base are Young Bucks fans. Unfortunately, they are fans of Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. That's where you built your company on. That would be like, you started a company, Degeneration X, and it's based off of China, Triple H, and Shawn Michaels, and you have to keep those people around, because the people who are starting to watch this promotion are starting because they want to see these three people. So you can't just start, kicking them out here and there, because now it's a completely different company. So Tony Khan kind of put himself over a barrel by not just making them EVPs, which, was already a bad decision, but naming the company after these guys. Like it's one thing to be the heart and soul of a company like Sting is to WCW. That's a mainstay. Like AJ Styles is to TNA. He was a mainstay. He was, the organ of the company. You can say heart. Sting was always a heart of WCW. Sting was a guy you could never see Sting going anywhere else. There was no amount of money where they could spend to get Sting out of WCW. He was the guy. And then, as per the usual, people came in, started making more money. Savage, Hogan, DiBiase, all those guys, and they started displacing Sting, and Sting lost his spot. And luckily for Sting, Hogan had to turn heel, so that top babyface spot opened up, and he was able to get his spot back. But Sting was displaced by Hogan and Savage and all those guys coming in, you know? And TNA, it was the same thing with AJ Styles. He was one of their top guys. And then you had Angle and Christian and those guys coming in. And later it was Jeff Hardy, and I think Mr. Kennedy came in a lot later. You know, it just kept being this recurring theme of WWE guys who've been released or fired coming into TNA and elbowing AJ Styles out of the way. And he ended up leaving, you know, because they didn't value him anymore. That's one aspect of being the heart and soul of a mainstay in the company. It's another thing to literally name the company after the guys that are in the company. You know, All Elite Wrestling literally does not exist without these guys. Now, on the subject of Colt Cabana, he says, I feel the investigation has happened, and I'm glad their names have been cleared, and they are welcome back to TV. And I'm happy to see Colt Cabana, who I think is a great human being and performer. I'm happy to see back on AEW programming. So the investigation that we're not allowed to have any information about, Matt Hardy says their names have been cleared. The names of the Young Bucks have been cleared in this investigation. Well, I'm so glad to hear it. It's not like we ever going to actually find out, you know, what any of that means. We just know that they've been cleared because Matt Hardy said so, and because AEW investigated itself and found that the Elite did nothing wrong. CM Punk was the bad guy all the time, which Jericho also seems to believe. So November the 9th, Chris Jericho does an interview with, what is this, Howie Mandel? That's a name I haven't heard since the 90s. I haven't heard the name Howie Mandel since the 90s, for Christ's sake. He said, Chris Jericho said this: there was a locker room fight that happened a couple months ago between a couple of guys. When these things happen, you have to deal with them. Sometimes the way to deal with it is guys just have to not be there anymore. Not cancel shows, but guys were suspended and that sort of thing. It happens. Sure it does. If you're a cast in a movie and you hate your co-star, either you make it work, do your job, put on a great performance, and never talk to each other again, or you leave the project. It's that simple. If there are people you have a problem with, which I've had over the years, not a lot, but this guy can rub me the wrong way. He's a fucking asshole, whatever. You still have to put on a good show. Sometimes you have to fight in the locker room and that sort of thing. It's a big team. Sometimes guys get into fights. Sometimes guys just have to have the wrong attitude for how to make the team work. That's how you have to look at it. Sometimes guys just have to leave. So it's Chris Jericho's opinion that sometimes guys just got to leave. And that guy has to be CM Punk. He's got to leave. He's got to go. You know, he's got to go. Sometimes guys just have to leave. Now, I'm not going to say Chris Jericho is saying anything wrong here. He's absolutely correct. You know, Jericho himself has gotten into backstage brouhahas with guys like Goldberg and Brock Lesnar, and he famously had a run-in with Shawn Michaels, too. It happens. And you do have to learn how to work together and get over it. But if you do have a guy like a CM Punk who holds grudges and is bitter, he got mad, bitter bitch energy, he's going to not let things blow over. He's going to continue to stew and bubble about it week after week. Again, they work 1 day a week. 1 day a week. You mean to tell me that for 6 days, you don't have to see these people, you don't have to think about them? I'd have been perfectly fine. I'd have been fine. I'd have lasted 2 or 3 years on having to deal with an asshole for 1 day a week. Because I'm pretty easy to get along with. Like, I'll call a dude the fucking asshole. But 1 day a week for a couple of hours? I mean, it's like, what, 8 hours? If call time is 12, the show is over at, what, midnight? You know, maybe from 12 to 12 hour shift. We don't know how long Dark and all that shit is and Rampage. I don't think they tape Rampage anymore, but whatever. Let's say you do 8 hours. 8 hours a day where you don't have to work with those people the whole 8 hours. That should be a breeze, bruh. You deal with them, in production, and that's about it. You split up, you go your separate ways. You're not working with them in a promo. You're not working with them in a match. If you have to work with them in a promo or work with them in a match, it shouldn't be that long, and you have the stroke to avoid them because you are CM Punk. You do have some backstage power and politics do work in your favor. You can avoid working with those fucking guys. So that means to tell me that, whatever it is, gave Punk such bitter bitch energy, which he always got anyway. He's always looking for a reason to have an attitude, that he just kind of decided to let it grate on him. He's just got that miserable streak in him. And it kicked in. And all of a sudden, he can't let it go. So, yeah, he probably did have to leave. I don't disagree with Chris Jericho at all. I don't disagree with Chris Jericho at all on this shit. Saying that these guys have probably got to go, yeah. Sometimes you do have to go. That's the best way to handle things sometimes, Now, maybe not on a permanent basis. Maybe the suspension would have been enough. Maybe if somebody would have got suspended earlier, it would have been fine. Maybe if you'd have suspended the guys before they got into whatever led into the fight, the Adam Page, CM Punk stuff, maybe somebody should have got suspended for that, Maybe somebody should have gotten pulled aside and said, okay, you're not going to work TV for a month. I'll continue to pay you, but I don't want you in this building because we need some time to let this thing blow over. We don't need you for TV. We're going to do an injury angle. You're going to sit out for a while, sit at home for 4 weeks. We're not even going to talk to anybody about it. And then you'll come back. And if you're not in the right frame of mind, then we'll have to continue doing stuff where you won't have to be here every week. Period. But they work 1 day a week. 1 day a week. Once a week, and they have all this problem, all this heat. It is ridiculous how they managed to get this done. But I don't disagree with Chris Jericho. He's a guy who's had these problems over the course of 30 years. He knows sometimes there are things that are irreparable, things that you can't take back. And I do believe that the media scrum that CM Punk did is something that you can't take back because it slaps people in the face in the locker room. Just like I think, the Kenny Omega, I wouldn't have hired, what was it? I wouldn't have hired 80% of you. I think that's what his statement, or something like that. That's a slap in the face to the locker room. I don't see how you can get your respect back after you say some stuff like that. Like, to me, and this has always been my thing with CM Punk supporters, if you think CM Punk is a big star, and I'm willing to grant you that for the purpose of this argument, LeBron James cannot go on ESPN and start dunking on his teammates. It makes him like a poor leader, and that's going to cause schisms in the locker room. It doesn't matter how much more important LeBron James is to the team than whoever is sitting on the bench. He's a man just like LeBron James is a man. If LeBron James goes on ESPN and starts talking about how this guy keeps missing free throws and, he ain't got no jumper and he's whack and yada, 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 and that dude goes over and punches LeBron James in his fucking mouth, he should, because you blasted him in public. You cannot do that. Tom Brady is not about to go out there and just rip on his wide receivers, rip on the offensive line and the running backs, and blame the defense because, hey, we scored out. We did our part. The offense did our part. The defense sucks. He can't do that. You can't do that. If you are supposed to be a team player, you cannot then immediately start going out and blasting your teammates. What CM Punk did was so incredibly unprofessional that he should have been removed from his position, whatever position he was in, when he did that. When he did that in public, that was essentially a license to get him removed from any type of leadership position that he was going to be in, because the locker room is going to lose respect for you. Even if you weren't talking about him, even if you were usually a friend of his, if anybody was a friend of yours and they did some shit like that, they got that kind of heat on them, you would pull them to the side and like, bro, you cannot do that. You cannot blast people in public like this and shame them because It will make them defensive, but it will also turn other people who might have been neutral, turn them against you. People who might have been, I don't got no problem with CM Punk, except for the fact that he just did that bullshit on TV. Because I'm usually a neutral person when it comes to schisms and conflicts between people I don't have any kind of relationship with. If I see one person come out and blast everybody else, I may laugh. I may think it was funny. I may even think it might be something worth doing. Because again, if LeBron James could go out there and tell the truth, guy missing 100 free throws, I can see that. I can see that's why the team lost, because the guy missed 8 free throws or whatever. But you still can't say it, because there's certain locker room stuff that needs to be handled in the locker room. There still needs to be stuff that needs to be handled with the coaches and with all the player that's a problem, and the coaches and everybody else. And then maybe you deal with it some other way, like the guy who keeps missing free throws, he don't play the next game. The guy who keeps missing free throws gets cut, later that week or whatever. And then you've dealt with it. And then the people who are watching can look at the statistic and say, yeah, this guy keeps fucking missing free throws. I wouldn't want him on my team either. Same thing in wrestling. If a guy's a fucking asshole and he's not useful to you and you cut him, guess what? The wrestling fans are going to look and say, well, the guy wasn't selling any merchandise. He wasn't over. He wasn't selling any tickets. He was just getting on people's nerves. I see why they would get rid of him. But if you go out there and you blast him and humiliate him and embarrass him, now you're going to build up some sympathy for the fucking guy. People are going to feel bad about him. They're going to look and be like, oh man, poor Adam Page. That's fucked up. CM Punk is a much bigger star than he is. Has had credibility from 10 years ago or whatever. CM Punk is known for doing stuff like this, blasting guys in public and hurting the careers of younger guys. He's known for doing that. So he's doing it now to guys in AEW. He's got a reputation for this. They're going to look at it and be like, I feel bad for him. I feel bad for him. And some people legitimately do. This is what started turning the tide against CM Punk in the first place. So many people see CM Punk as a permanently bitchy woman. He's a bitchy old lady. He's a hag, and he's like permanently miserable. And people see him that way because that's the image he's pushed out there for years and years, of him just being bitchy. Whether it's OVW, ROH, AEW, WWE, that's just kind of how he is. And they just feel like, man, that's fucked up. Look what he did to Ryback. Look what he tried to do to Roman Reigns. Look at what he did to Triple H and all these guys, where he just went out there and aired all their personal business on all of these podcasts and stuff like that. Look what he did to Colt Cabana, who was a guy who was his best friend for over 10 years. Listen to what he said about him in the scrum. People link up with that shit, and they start feeling bad because these people don't have the platform. Colt Cabana don't have the platform. Hangman Page don't have the platform. They're not big enough stars. If Hangman Page would have went out there and shot on CM Punk and said all kind of crazy stuff about CM Punk, people would have been like, get that fucking guy out of here. Fire him. But nobody even said CM Punk should be fired. It wasn't until CM Punk threw a punch that people was kind of like, yeah, you got to get him out of the locker room. Even after he did all the shit that he did in terms of embarrassing guys. Nobody said, everybody was on his side when he went out and aired out WWE. Everybody was on his side. Nobody asked, important questions like why the fuck he has to mention Ryback and talk bad about Ryback. Why he's got to talk bad about Roman Reigns. Why did he have to do most of that shit? Why did he even have to do it? You want to talk about Triple H and Vince McMahon? Okay, they're in positions of authority. Okay, fine. But Ryback? Like, yes, Ryback sucks. But again, like I just said, LeBron James can't go talking about the guy on the bench. We know the Ryback wasn't that great. Okay? We know that. But you going out there telling everybody, burying them, okay, now you've buried the fucking guy's career. Now we see that you have some kind of authority of yourself here. You're kicking another guy while he's down. It's not you picking on Vince or talking shit about Johnny Ace, some of these empty suits that nobody knows or nobody cares about. Like, how about call him Dean Ambrose? Like John Moxley talking about Kevin Dunn or something like that. That's one thing. Nobody cares about that. But when you're actively hurting somebody else and you're supposed to be one of these stand up for the workers kind of guys, Yeah. You know, what about the workers like Big Swole? That when Tony Khan shit on her. What about the workers like Leo Rush when Tony Khan shit on him? You know, that's when people start bringing that stuff up. But if you want to talk about your personal beefs, you can't do it in public. Do it in the back. And I know that's probably what they were doing. They were probably trying their best to get it handled in the back, and it wasn't being handled the way that they wanted to be handled. And CM Punk's major beef was with the media. But once you start, and this, again, same thing I said about Matt Hardy, once you start running things from the hip, once you start opening the floodgates and you start letting shit out, you never know which direction you're going to go into. So maybe it started with CM Punk's going to go off on the media. But once he started talking about Colt Cabana, once he started talking about the Young Bucks and Hangman Page, his stock as a locker room leader started to go down. Because now everybody sees this dude is willing to throw people under the bus. And you should have already known that because he already done it. He had done it multiple times before. But that is irreparable damage to the locker room. That is being a locker room cancer. People may think Chris Jericho's being an ass kisser and an opportunist. He's taken the chance to kick CM Punk in the balls from their Cold War from 2015 or whatever. And that all might be true. But is he wrong? Is he wrong? No, he's not wrong. You know, you can't call people out in public. Not by name. Like when you say, like when Undertaker said that the locker room gotten soft. Some guys got offended and they spoke up in public. He didn't say any names. He just said that, certain people in the locker room had gotten soft. And he waited till he retired to say that. So he wasn't in the locker room with them every week calling them soft and shit. He had already formally retired. It was like, yeah, I'm kind of done with this. Those dudes kind of soft. Whatever. I get it. I get it from the perspective that I'm talking about right now, why these people got offended. They shared a locker room with him. This is the guy who retired. Everybody clapped and patted him on the back, and then he, said that you guys suck. And now they're like, whoa, they're feeling betrayed. That's why you can't do it. That's why you can't do it. You have to maintain an era or aura of respect when you are in a leadership position over other people. If you put out, and this goes to the Young Bucks too, and back to the Matt Hardy statement, when you start putting out things that people don't respect, then that's when this respect erodes. Just like we know that Young Bucks planted stories in the media. Yes, we know that it's true. CM Punk saying it doesn't make it not true. We know that it was true. Okay? But that's why people didn't like them. That's why a lot of people who were paying attention didn't like the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, because they knew that there was favorable AEW media, but you still can't go out and say that while you're on the roster. Because there are going to be people who are not going to believe it, who are also going to be on that roster, and now you're going to have people splintering and taking sides in the locker room. It's going to become sort of like what it was when Cody was there anyway. Like, I already knew there was some weirdness going on because it was all elite wrestling and Cody was an elite. But there was also the Codyverse, where Cody did his own thing and none of it crossed paths with the Young Bucks or Kenny Omega or nothing they were doing. He was always onto an island unto himself. And then it was the exact same thing when CM Punk came in, where he was on an island by himself. That one time it crossed over was the Hangman Page feud, and shit jumped off. People who are paying attention, we can see that, but you still have to maintain an aura of respect and leadership. So CM Punk and the Elite, all of them fucking suck. I have no side in the argument, really. I just think that it's very strange that Matt Hardy would be the first one to put his name out there and say that I stand with the Elite, which is his right to do. He's there, I'm not. But I don't fucking like the Elite, so I don't really care. And we know that Jericho is not Team Punk. He might not be on the Elite side, but he's not Team Punk, that's for sure. Jericho's on Jericho's side. Jericho just kind of like, he didn't even want the responsibility of being an MVP, or EVP rather. He just wanted the money. And that's really, and he got more money. So now he's more on Tony Khan's side. And, it is what it is. As long as Jericho ain't backstage starting fights, he can put out bad TV all he wants. But he's not backstage starting fights. He's not backstage causing problems. He's not a locker room issue. He's not embarrassing the boys. Now, maybe he shouldn't say stuff. Like, Jericho has a history of saying stuff in AEW that he shouldn't say. Like, I think, a couple of years ago, he was talking about how he had to chastise Penta and Phoenix for the lack of tags in their tag team matches. I was like, okay, well, maybe he shouldn't have said that. Maybe he shouldn't have said their names, because he did say their names. But he probably shouldn't have said their names. But it wasn't that big of a deal, because it was, one of those things that it's a minor. Just make sure you make it's a visible tag that people can see, so that people won't have that criticism of the product. That, of course, it didn't change that much, because, again, it's Penta and Phoenix. They're Mexicans. They're fuck tags, right? So, but you have to prevent locker room strife, the splintering of the boys. If you have a critique for them, it should be a thing that makes everybody better, that makes the product better, that makes the boys feel like, okay, I can fix that. It's not that big of a deal. But when you do what CM Punk did, you sever all ties. People don't want anything to do with you at that point. They don't feel like they can trust you anymore. They don't feel like your critiques is done in a way to make them feel better or perform better or do better. They see what you're doing as a ridicule. That's why everybody walked away from the CM Punk scrum laughing and giggling at the Young Bucks, laughing and giggling at Hangman, because it was all ridicule. None of it was constructive criticism. None of it was, let's go out and let's tighten up on this particular issue. Let's tighten up on this. Let's, get better, on this issue, which if you're LeBron James, you're expected to do. If the team lost, he's expected to say, yeah, we need to tighten up on our three-point shooting. Not any player individually, but we need to take better shots. We need to, make our free throws. We need to, create more open shots for, our teammates, yada, yada, yada. Boilerplate shit. Stuff that analysts can see, that they say, okay, yes, you can fix that. And the other players can say, yeah, we can work on that. And nobody individually gets their feelings hurt. But as soon as people individually start getting their feelings hurt, and you are the one who did it in public, you lose respect. And you lose respect, you lose your position as a leader. They have to get rid of you at that point. All right, so let's talk about AEW Dynamite now. All right, let's get into AEW Dynamite. First match, Gun Club and Swerve and Lee versus FTR and the Acclaimed in an 8-man tag team match. Clearly, FTR and the Acclaimed win. Swerve was chased by Billy Gunn outside the ring. There wasn't much to this match. I'm just not feeling Swerve and Lee as a tag team. And what is up with this Mike Jones ass theme song that Swerve got? It seems just like Mike Jones screaming into a microphone. And I don't think I've ever asked that question before. But whoever recorded his theme song they need a new one. It's awful. It's just Mike Jones. The Mike Jones flow is all over that joint. It's disgusting. It's tragic. FTR actually won a match. Yay. But they ain't getting the title match. It ain't them. All right. Next up was MJF. He was on a podcast and he cut a promo. And it was very good. The gist of it was that the firm are cowards. But he is only worried about Moxley right now. It's going to be the most important match, not just of his career, but the most important match in the history of the industry. And he could become the face of a generation. And he named all of these great wrestlers like Bruno and Hogan and Cena. And we could watch the crowning of the new face of the next generation of pro wrestlers. He said that he respects Jon Moxley, but thinks Jon Moxley is low-life scum. But he respects him because of Moxley's work ethic. And that Moxley wasn't born to do this, that he had to work hard to do it. But MJF was born to be the number one pro wrestler in the business. And he's going to make this something everyone is talking about. Make pro wrestling something everybody's talking about again. He's tired of waiting on his turn, and that he was overshadowed each time. It was a big moment for him. calling All Out the time he got overshadowed by a press conference. I think it might have been his first pay-per-view match where he mentioned it was overshadowed by a neck tattoo. And he said that now he's tired of waiting. He's going to grab the spotlight, and that Regal bet on the wrong horse. So it was a really good promo, fiery, intense, nice little respectful promo. It's kind of like a little middle of the road promo where he kind of healed on Moxley a little bit, but not as much. The AEW fan base seems to like these promos or these people where they sit in a gray area where, oh, the bad guy makes a good point, where the guy who's supposed to be the devil is rational and giving somebody compliments. It's supposed to be legitimate compliments. I don't know. Interestingly enough, Stokely promo was later. He said that him and MJF had came up together and they thought they wanted the same things out of the business, like fast cars and money and women and all that kind of stuff. But then MJF started dick riding Jon Moxley, and that the worst thing you could do in this business is dick ride without a license. And now he realizes that he's not going to be at his best friend's side when he becomes the world champion. He's going to have to go it alone. That was something. That was something. Dick riding without a license. I know that kind of stuff is kind of it's kind of hard to people who they're not used to hearing that kind of stuff. But when you kind of grow up hearing that kind of stuff, it's not that big of a deal. But it was interesting that we're bringing that kind of language to AEW. I'm surprised they let him say dick riding, though. I really am. But this takes us to Jon Moxley, who did his promo in the ring. He talked about being 25 or 26 when William Regal met him, that he was full of piss and vinegar, a young tough guy, wanted to make a name for himself. He found himself picking fights with William Regal. The first time, William Regal bloodied him, beat him up. But the second time, he actually won. And William Regal told him that the real work begins. So after beating him, you got to start really getting to work. He talked about MJF challenging him in mid-2020, that he bloodied him, beat him up, and said, what's going to be different this time? He says MJF is having an identity crisis. He likes to talk the talk, and he likes to dress the part, but he knows that that's not MJF. Says that he's a real multimillionaire pro wrestler, so he knows a little bit about this. Said that MJF calls himself a pillar, despite the fact of never having any weight on his back, and said that MJF likes to call himself the devil. Then he talked about, and this was pretty good. He looked straight into the camera and said that he knows some bad people. He met some bad people in some real bad places. And MJF is certainly not that. So Moxley is cutting a straight shooting babyface style promo, and MJF is waffling, where half heel, half babyface, and I don't get why they would do that. Like, I liked this match doesn't have any heat to it, I know MJF is out doing a movie. He's doing the Von Erich movie. He's gonna be playing Lance Von Erich, who was the fake Von Erich that they brought in when the boys started having their problems, let's say, like dying and being on drugs. So I'm guessing that's the role that MJF is playing. At least that's what I heard. I didn't read the article completely. I honestly came unprepared with that one. But he will be in that movie somehow. It's going to be the Von Erichs movie that they're doing. So maybe that's why this feud doesn't have any heat. But they certainly are running off of we're going to crown MJF and everybody wants to see that. So that's what you need to tune in to see. Rather than building legitimate heat between these two guys. I don't know, man. But Moxley is good at talking. MJF is good at talking. It was a good pair of talking segments. I could have done without. I don't understand why Stokely is even involved with this. I don't understand why we had to have the firm turn on MJF before he won the title. Maybe, just maybe they will try to do that flip and MJF will turn heel at the show, or double down on his heelness, because you don't really turn heel in AEW anymore as much as you just double down on his heelness at the show. Maybe, possibly. I don't know. I mean, you tell me what you think, but it's fine. It was a fine promo segment. I didn't mind it from either guy. Next, we had a Full Gear Tournament Eliminator. Ethan Page defeating Eddie Kingston. Stokely Carmichael interacted with the match, distracting the referee. Eddie Kingston had the match won with the stump puller. Then all of a sudden, Ortiz took forever. His hair has grown back very quickly, but he took forever to chase Stokely off. Didn't matter at all, though. Ethan Page wins with the Ego's Edge off the middle rope. So I'm guessing this is the guy that they're going to try to build to be MJF's first opponent when he wins the title. I guess it's kind of a foregone conclusion that MJF is going to win the belt, right? And then probably be a babyface going forward. And they're going to try to build these firm guys to be contenders for the belt. So I'm guessing Ethan Page is going to be the first one. I can tell you this, that ain't going to work. I'm sorry, but Ethan Page doesn't have the stuff to be a main event talent. Even if he wins this tournament, it's a tournament full of guys who nobody cares. Like Eddie Kingston was a guy people cared about, but Eddie Kingston's been waffling for the last 2 months. Ever since his issues with Sammy Guevara, nobody's really cared about Eddie Kingston. It's just kind of been shrug. If he's there, he's there. If he's not, he's not. Under normal circumstances, I think people would have been upset and would want Eddie Kingston to be the guy that would get the call in this tournament. There's people not too long ago that wanted Eddie Kingston to be the world champion, But now things have changed. How the worm has turned and how the worm continues to turn. We got a backstage segment for Rush and the Dark Order. Rush's assistant, which I'm guessing is Andrade's assistant, promised 10 of the Dark Order a championship match once Rush becomes the world champion because of his dedication to staying in shape and, of course, to woo him away from the Dark Order. The short guy, the shrimp from Dark Order, said something smart to Rush, and he was going to tear his head off. And we went to commercial or something like that. Jesus Christ. I can't believe they got Rush, and this is what they're doing. They're doing the Dark Order. Bruh, come on. I can't believe the Dark Order is still around, man. Every time I look up and the Dark Order is still there, I'm just stupefied by the fact that they still exist. It's okay for us to say that, it's over. It's done. We don't need these guys anymore. What do we need them for? They suck. Speaking of sucks, Arya Daivari was in the ring and offered Wardlow his butler for the TNT title. Not a TNT title match, but for the title. So his plan was to come out there and not offer Wardlow money, but to offer Wardlow the services of his butler. And so that he can go from being MJF's servant to having his own. Wardlow, of course, comes out there, powerbombs Arya Daivari 100 times, defends the TNT title against him. A complete waste of everybody's time and energy. It was completely stupid. Wardlow then called out Powerhouse Hobbs from attacking him. Then said that he finally found a suitable opponent. Then he was attacked from behind by Samoa Joe. So Samoa Joe turned on his WarJoe tag team partner. Wow. Joe hit Wardlow in the head with the belt, then choked him out from behind. Then Hobbs yelled at Joe that he would kick his ass too. So apparently I missed this part where Wardlow apparently said he's coming after all the titles or something like that. And that's what set Joe off. That's why Joe's doing this, is because Wardlow says he's coming after all of the titles. Come on. Come on, man. I ain't buying this, all right? There really was... I didn't see any hints of a heel turn from Samoa Joe. It just came out of nowhere. I'm going to take the people who probably watch AEW a little bit closer than I do. I'm going to take their word for it. And even if that's the case, still not enough to really sell me on Samoa Joe turning heel on Wardlow for any reason. It just seems like they didn't have anything for Joe to do. And Wardlow, they need him to beat somebody. And it seems like they're now going to move it more towards a triple threat match to try to, again, overprotecting people instead of having Wardlow just wrestle Samoa Joe and win, or wrestling Powerhouse Hobbs and win or lose. We're going to do a triple threat match where they can beat the shit out of each other, and then nobody has to take a clean pin because there was also somebody else in the match who didn't have to take the pin. So to me, it seemed like it's just bad business. What was wrong with Hobbs and Wardlow? What's wrong with that? Why can't we have that and then Joe turns heel on him? Which to me, I mean, it's always problematic for me for you to split the spotlight that many ways in big matches, especially for a guy you're trying to get over. If you're trying to get Wardlow over, he needs to have the spotlight. You can't keep putting him in triple threat matches because you're concerned that, you know, other people might overshadow him or whatever the case may be. Eventually, you have to pull the trigger. Wardlow is suffering from the same thing that he did to Hook. It's overprotection. It got him in a nursery where he's being breastfed. Opponents like Arya Daivari. This crap actually makes people not interested in what you're doing. Instead of making people interested in what you're doing, you're making people uninterested because nobody wants to watch Arya Daivari. But if you put them in the ring with somebody that, you know, they considerably look at it as legitimate, like a Powerhouse Hobbs or Samoa Joe, then people are interested because now we've seen him powerbomb the small guys 100 times already. We've seen that. Now let's see him do it to some bigger dudes. Now let's see him do it to some guys who got a little bit of name value, a little bit of a reputation. And that's what they did with Hook. They had Hook beat all the smaller job guys and a bunch of underneath dudes, but he never made it up the card. It's like you win 100 matches in Mortal Kombat, but you never go up that pillar. You know, you keep winning, but you never go up that pillar. Like Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, whatever, you see those fighting games and you beat the guy and then you go up. You beat the guy and you go up. Like eventually you get to Shao Kahn, you know, you get to Goro and shit, right? In AEW, you beat all of these guys and you never get to the fucking Shao Kahn or Goro. You just never fucking get there. So so people lose interest. They just kind of like, okay, as long as he's winning, everything is okay, I guess. But then the crowd reaction starts to go down and down and down because people are not just happy to see you. You know, that's an old wives' tale that wrestling fans are just happy to see you. That if you just come out, parade around, and go to the back, all of a sudden you've done the wrestling fans some kind of favor. It's like, no, people want to see you do stuff. All right. Go up the card, you know, especially when you're not established. You can't book people who are not established like people who are. Stone Cold Steve Austin can afford to just come out there and give stunners to underneath guys because he is in a position where people are just happy he's there. But Wardlow isn't. You know, he's finally getting a push. He ain't really won anything. He's a TNT champion, but he ain't had any feuds. He ain't had any opponents. We need to actually do stuff with this guy. He needs to be in angles. He needs to have the big one-on-one matches. He needs to get beat bloody a little bit. He needs to, you know, walk out with some black eyes and have some tough matches so people will respect him. You can't keep babying the guy. You know, it just doesn't work that way. I know people think that, you know, that's what WCW did with Goldberg. It's like, that's why people didn't respect Goldberg. That's why they were piping in Goldberg chants, you know, sometimes. And then sometimes people were booing him. It's like you have to get over in a more natural way. Look at how Vince booked the Ultimate Warrior. Warrior crushed some guys. He struggled against others, you know, but the opponent toughness increased to the point where he was wrestling Hulk Hogan. Then he's wrestling Hogan and Savage and Ted DiBiase and all those guys. The challenge increased, you know. That's what people want to see. People want to see, yeah, the guy who beat the Honky Tonk Man in 4 seconds, can he do that to The Undertaker? Can he do that to Hulk Hogan? Those are questions that get people's interest. Not, hey, that guy beat the Honky Tonk Man in 4 seconds. Well, how many seconds is it going to take for him to beat Virgil or the Red Rooster or whatever the fuck? It's like, come on, man. It's not a pageant. It's not a beauty pageant. You know, we want to see these guys get tested. We want to see growth. We want to see progression. AEW just refuses to do it. They have their favorites, and Jade Cargill is another one. Hook, Jade Cargill, and Wardlow are just, they got a boot on their neck. It's not that they're not winning matches. It's that they're winning matches nobody cares about, and against opponents nobody takes seriously. Therefore, they're boring as fuck. You know, they booking Jade Cargill against Nyla Rose at the pay-per-view. It's like, you can't be serious. You cannot be serious. Nobody gives a fuck about Nyla Rose. Why are you doing that to Jade? At this point, you're actively harming Jade by not giving her tougher opponents. You know, you have to give people tougher opponents. You have to. All right, but back to the subject of the triple threat match. I would really prefer Wardlow versus Joe or Wardlow versus Hobbs, and then the other guy just comes in afterwards. Again, to escalate the opponent, I would have Wardlow wrestle Hobbs first, get a win, and then Joe attacks him from behind. That way, again, Wardlow is escalating. But they're probably going to pull a triple threat match because that's what AEW does. So it is what it is, though. I'm not going to complain too much. I don't think I can, because I really don't think I care that much. All right, so I already mentioned Jade Cargill. She's a giant in comparison to Layla Gray and Kiera Hogan, though. She was standing next to them, man. She was like a statue standing next to them. But I already talked about that. She's going to be wrestling goddamn Nyla Rose, which is not for anybody's best benefit. All right, so Tony Schiavone, Britt Baker, and Saraya did a fabulous in-ring interview. So the gist of it was Saraya is 100% cleared by Dr. Hibbert from The Simpsons, apparently, or Dr. Dre. You know, it's apparently some shit. Apparently Doctor Who is it's because I don't know, man. Some doctor somewhere said that Saraya can have a wrestling match, so she got a great reaction for that. Then she said that AEW is her house. Britt Baker said that the AEW fans are fickle. Talked about building AEW from the ground up, making a place for superstars like her would want to join, and said that she is everything that Saraya wishes she was, and that Saraya left her house to come into Britt's house, which was a great line at the end. I like that. That was pretty good. Saraya then responded that Britt Baker was handed everything by Tony Khan. She was spoon-fed a couple of QT Marshall students, and she being Saraya, has 17 years in the business, and that Britt has no idea what it takes to be a star. She talked about her struggles, wrestling as an underage girl at the time, being humiliated in public, drug addictions, other issues, injuries, and all of the different things that she had to overcome to become a star in this business. And said that this is going to be another moment that Britt is going to be handed, because it's her comeback match at Full Gear, Britt Baker versus Saraya. Then people immediately got on Twitter and got really upset at two things. One, Saraya big leaguing Britt Baker by saying she's a real superstar, apparently because she went to WWE, even though she didn't say that. And two, that Saraya said that she worked in the Tokyo Dome when she really didn't. Now, I don't care about either one of these things, but there have been people who are they're kind of, I guess, I don't know, they're sensitive to the idea of WWE being better than AEW or being perceived to be better. But what she didn't say that she was a big star because she worked in WWE. She was saying that Britt Baker doesn't know what it means to be a star because she hasn't had to sacrifice and she hasn't had to do the things that Saraya has had to do. She hasn't had the struggles that Saraya has had. She doesn't know what it's like to be a star in this business. That's what I took from it. Other people took from it that she was saying, I was in WWE. She didn't even mention WrestleMania. Like, she didn't mention WrestleMania or Raw or anything like that. Or, she just mentioned traveling the world, going up and down Europe or whatever, which is stuff that we know she did. We know she worked on the independents and that kind of stuff. We know that she started young. She's not, I think she's like a little over 30 or just turned 30 or something like that. She's not old, but she's been in the business since she was before she had boobs. She's been in the business forever. That's one of the reasons why her neck was bad. She's been taking hellacious bumps, hell, some of them for free, since she was like a preteen or some shit. So we know that. But it just seems like some people just get real sensitive and thought that Saraya was turning heel near the end. But when it really was a lot of the AEW fan base jumped on the concept that Britt Baker is sort of their homegirl. She's the girl that helped grow AEW, and they don't like that Saraya was downplaying that Britt Baker had helped to build AEW. They didn't really appreciate that. But what Saraya said was not false. I remember those days when Britt Baker was awful, when she wasn't ready yet. And everybody kept saying, she wasn't ready yet. And then what they kept doing, they kept putting her out there. No, she wasn't ready yet. She sucked when she first started. She wasn't any good. But they kept giving her opportunities. They kept the door open. They kept pushing her. They kept in it. And it was partially because they didn't have anybody else. They didn't have the depth in the roster at the time. They still don't really. But they saw potential, and they let her blossom into what she can do. And this is what you get. So she was given that opportunity. But part of it was that she was spoon-fed these opportunities because she didn't really have to wrestle anybody, because AEW's women's roster was never that deep. It was never fighting for, well, it was fighting for TV time, but it was never her first legitimate opponent was Thunder Rosa, I think. Like Thunder Rosa was legit in terms of having history and somebody who can match her in intensity and passion, and somebody actually the audience cared about. Like Hikaru Shida was cool and all, but I don't think she was like a real rival for Britt Baker. Thunder Rosa was, and it's only been those two, like, to have a real feud in the division. They haven't done it with any other women. Like, yes, Britt Baker is given opportunities that other women are not. Just the fact that Britt Baker was the immediate first opponent for Saraya is a tip of the hat to tell everybody Britt Baker's the girl. She won the Owen Hart tournament. She was like the longest reigning women's champion. They gave her more opportunities than they gave the other women. That is not a lie to say. But it's also not a lie to say when Britt Baker says that she is the one who made the division respectable. That is true. When Rio was the champion, nobody cared. When Nyla Rose was the champion, that was cringe. Hikaru Shida was a closet champion. Toni Storm is not even involved with the top feud in the division. This is the top feud in the division. Toni Storm is just present. And Thunder Rosa, well, when she was the champion, she was barely there. And she's not there now. So I didn't see this as Saraya was turning heel or trying to become a heel, or I just looked at it like the AEW fans look at they look at the show like a sports team. This is our team. That's our quarterback. Our quarterback is Britt Baker. So that's who they side with on this situation. It has nothing to do with what Saraya actually said. It has everything to do with our quarterback talking that shit. We're going to give her props. We're going to boo the other girl. Even though they didn't really boo Saraya, as much as they just kind of, she got a little bit of a middling reaction at the end. But overall, I liked the promo segment between both women. I thought it was very good. Very fiery promo from Britt and from Saraya. So it was a good performance. Looking forward to the match. All right. Sanjay Dutt pays Cole Carter for his performance last week. Danhausen, Orange Cassidy, and a bunch of other guys show up. This just leads to Jay Lethal versus Trent Beretta, a match that nobody cared about, nobody wanted to see. Jay Lethal wins. Then Jeff Jarrett comes out there. They cut a promo a little bit later. Jeff Jarrett says he was going to explain what he's got in common with these people. He said that he signed Jay Lethal to his first contract. Jay Lethal ended up having some big wins over some big names. And then, of course, he ends up talking about Sanjay Dutt, saying that Sanjay Dutt has a 181 IQ, which we know that's a lie. We know that's a lie. Sanjay Dutt is a pinhead. Then he starts talking about Satnam Singh being a legit giant, unlike the fake wannabe giant that wears red skinny jeans from the Banana Nose Circus, which he's talking about, of course, Braun Strowman, who wears red tights occasionally. Then they featured it, closed it by saying they're going to put Sting in a body bag. That's all very nice, Jeff. Taking a shot at Braun Strowman. I guess that's fair play. I guess. But Satnam Singh is not nearly as talented as Braun Strowman. If you're going to do that, at least be able to back it up. Nobody cares that Satnam Singh played in the NBA. I've never seen him. Never heard of him. And look, I'm not saying that means anything because I don't really watch basketball. But never seen him, never heard of him. And when it comes to wrestling, he doesn't do it. He doesn't do wrestling. He doesn't wrestle. When was the last time you had a match? So when you talk about how he's a legitimate giant, like, no, he's just a tall guy. Giant implies not just being big, but it implies being imposing and scary. Giants are creatures of myth, not just big things. You can be a big thing. A giraffe is big, but a giraffe is relatively harmless. All right. Yes, a giraffe can fuck you up if it wanted to, but it doesn't really want to. It just wants to eat leaves. Like, it evolved the long neck to eat leaves higher in the trees, not to use as a weapon, which I know sometimes it does. Sometimes they sword fight with their necks, which is really weird. But giraffes do it. Giraffes are big fucking deer, essentially. That's really what they are. A deer might fuck you up if you get too close. But most of the time, a deer is going to run away, try to get away from you. Just being big is not not just it. So what? He's tall. Show me the giant characteristics of Satnam Singh. He's just big. He even, Jeff Jarrett has the cameraman shoot him like Andre. Shoot him slowly from the feet up. Like Andre or Kamala or something. Because AEW couldn't have done it on their own. They had to get told by old ass Jeff Jarrett to do it. But I don't really care that he took a shot at Braun Strowman. We all know it's a joke. None of this shit matters. JJ just says whatever to whoever is paying him, just like most other wrestlers. So if you get yourself worked up by this, you should be embarrassed. Jungle Boy, he cut a promo saying that Christian doesn't get to decide when it's over between him and Luchasaurus, and that he's got more words for them on Rampage. I wish he did not. The last thing I need is for more Jungle Boy promos. Apparently, AEW is going to be going to the UK in 2023. Okay, sure. Let's see how that works. Let's see how What Culture and all of those guys, how many of them can we fit in a sardine can? Because they're all going to be there sweating and stinking on top of each other, popping each other's blackheads on each other's faces and all that kind of stuff, not washing up, not brushing their teeth, what they do. As they do. There's an Elite vignette where they show childhood pictures and a bunch of other stuff. Apparently, they're going to be coming back at Full Gear. They didn't just say they're coming back at Full Gear. They just had sort of the Full Gear background on the stuff that they were doing. So, I'm guessing they're coming back at Full Gear. I'm guessing. There was a vignette for Sammy Guevara and Bryan Danielson, where Bryan Danielson said that Sammy Guevara's face has all of the disrespect that he's seen from guys like Chris Jericho and Daniel Garcia, etc., and that he's going to stomp his face in again, which that sounds very nice. Bryan Danielson did defeat Sammy Guevara in the best of three or best 2 out of 3 falls match. Danielson won the first fall by disqualification because Sammy Guevara very recklessly hit him in the head with a chair. That's the same kind of way he threw that chair at Matt Hardy when he split Matt Hardy's head open. Sammy Guevara won the second by pinfall, and Bryan Danielson won the third by submission. It was basically referee stoppage because I don't think Guevara actually tapped out. Again, I don't like Sammy Guevara's matches, but I do like Bryan Danielson. I think Danielson has done as best he can with Sammy Guevara. There's not too much you can do. Guevara's just going to get up and not sell shit. It's just kind of how he works. You know, he's not going to sell things. He's just going to do shit. He's going to flip all over the place. And that's just kind of how he works, man. So if you liked it, you liked it. If you don't, you don't. But I'm not a big fan of Sammy Guevara. Where's my stars? Where's my stars? I want to see how many stars he gets for this one. Jamie Hayter defeated Sky Blue. Who cares? And Lance Archer beat up Ricky Starks backstage to set up their match on Rampage. I really wish they didn't do that to Ricky Starks. It would be nice if Ricky Starks actually won matches on TV and cut promos and, you know, was treated like a star. I expect Ricky Starks to win this match, but I still don't like the idea of, you know, what should have been Ricky Starks' promo time was turned into Lance Archer's mean mug, breathe hard time. And we know that Lance Archer is a absolute train wreck and is never going to get over on this roster. And I'm surprised he's still there, if we're being honest. He's better off getting put in the garbage bin and then slapped back to New Japan and then leaving him at the nearest FedEx store or whatever, UPS store with a sticker, send his ass back to Okinawa or whatever, because he fucking sucks. But that's AEW for you. So that's it. That's AEW Dynamite. Nothing spectacular, even though we were promised some big news from Brian Alvarez. There's going to be some big news. I guess the big news was Saraya's return to the ring, which I'm guessing that was it. Or was it AEW's announcement that they're going to the UK? Neither one of those things were big. It had everybody on Twitter talking about that Sasha Banks was going to be there and all that kind of shit. I'm just like, wow. It doesn't take much to get people to go stupid, does it? Like nobody nowhere said anything about Sasha Banks except, you know, somebody said she posted about being in Boston. I guess she was there to make a movie. And people just let their imaginations run wild. All of a sudden she was going to join the AEW. I'm like, come on. Be real. Be real. But nothing major happened. You know, no Jericho tonight, which was a surprise. It might have been the first time with no Jericho in a long time. I really, really want more for Wardlow and Samoa Joe and Hobbs. I like all three of those guys. I really wish we could get more in a way that makes all three of these guys look tough and strong and they get to show off. And, you know, the two young guys get put over in some way. Maybe have Hobbs fight Joe for the match against Wardlow or something to that effect. But, you know, I don't know. It's real sad. But what do you guys think about everything we've talked about here today? Like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.
MagMongoSlade. Best house I ever drew, Daddy.